Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of A Handful of Hope. I am so happy and grateful to have Erin Vanderkooy with us here today, who is a certified health coach at Vanderkooy Wellness, herbalist, entrepreneur, heart-centered people connector, and facilitator. She's the founder of Power, Portland, Oregon Women and Entrepreneur Roundtable, and co-founder of women's grief retreats called Pause, Breathe, Restore. Her lifelong passion for food, integrative medicine, and helping people has cultivated her entrepreneurial wellness spirit and avocation as a people connector, tracing back to her Dear Erin column in her school newspaper at the age of 8, to launching a successful recruitment business at the beginning of the 2008 recession in London, England. Erin's life experience with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, debilitating panic attacks, autoimmune candida, and navigating the grief after the sudden loss of her mom led to her advocate for a new nutrition paradigm and understanding of the grief process and a coaching approach that is supportive yet direct and incredibly empowering through the plants and natural remedies that make sustainable long-term impact. Erin, welcome, and thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I forgot what I sent you. It was neat to hear all that read out.
Oh my God, it was so neat to read it all too. It's just like I'm going through it all. There's like 50 things in there I want to ask you, and I know we only have a short amount of time, so. Erin, you and I were talking beforehand, and people have come up with some really, I think, unique ways to pass. The time of this recording is July 27th, 2020. Some really unique ways to pass this time of COVID with restrictions on where we can live, how we can live. And you were sharing with me a really cool one that I haven't heard before, and hoping you might offer it up to all of us so we can hear what you've been up to.
Yes, I would love to. I'm actually really excited to talk about this. I didn't think about sharing this, but I think I'm going to write a little bit more about this experiment that I've been doing. So I was mentioning to you that July I decided to take an Amazon fast, and it's been really fascinating to kind of observe your behavior around, all sorts of different things throughout COVID, but in particular, I've always had a kind of a love-hate with Amazon. Sometimes you really need something and you need it quickly, and it arrives and it seems so convenient, but then you have the guilt. And in June, in our household, there's three ladies here, and me personally really started ramping up. Our doorbell was going every day, sometimes a couple times a day. And I was realizing that I was getting deliveries maybe 3, sometimes 4 times a week. And our cardboard is stacking up in the back, and I'm thinking, this is trees, and then the plastic inside, and so I decided enough's enough, because I realized as well that I was getting that dopamine hit. The doorbell would go, and I go, oh, you get the flutters and all excited and forget what you even bought. And so the month of July, I decided that every time I wanted to buy something on Amazon, I would put it into my little basket, and I would try and find it locally as a first step. And what's been interesting is that I've realized there's things in there that I didn't even really figure that I needed after a couple of days thought as well. And so in the first week, I'm throwing loads of stuff in the basket, and I've been doing an analysis. So at the end of the month, I'm going to be able to say I bought X amount locally, which feels so much better. I can use my reusable bag. I'm supporting local businesses, which I always tried to do in the past and have done in the past. But and then what I didn't buy at all and ended up going out, and then maybe what I still might need, and see if there actually, I'm hoping, if there is anything in there that I do feel I still need at the end of the month. And then I'm going to write up the whole analysis. And it's just been a really interesting experiment. And it took about a week, and the dopamine effect started to go away. The girls still get a few things here and there, but I felt really nice to let that go and think, don't need to know what's out there in the box. But it's been a lot of fun. And it's just interesting in our habits what we can slide into unknowingly and then pull ourselves back out from, and just observe and get curious.
I was going to ask you about that. So did you notice that there was a withdrawal from it? Like that withdrawal?
Oh, for sure.
Really?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for about a week. It took about a week. And I think about this in a lot of things. Our taste buds change after 7 to 14 days. So I'm just realizing I'm getting really hot as well because I'm drinking this tea right now. But there was a stage where I felt like I could never I lived in England for 14 years. So I always, at the beginning of my time there, had a dark cup of tea with milk and 2 sugars. And I couldn't imagine drinking tea without milk and 2 sugars. And now the idea of that is so revolting to me. You know, I drink my tea pretty much black or straight up for the herbs, but yeah, it's just interesting to see things change over time. So yeah, it was probably about a week to 10 days, and then it went away.
You mentioned putting stuff in your basket and then realizing that there was some of it you didn't need. Do you feel this process has made you more conscious of what you shop for, how you and why you shop for it? Then also, I guess, kind of a piggyback on that. Did you find that, because I've often wondered this with myself with Amazon, I realize that Amazon, the convenience of it, it affords me to cater to any impulse I have. And
Yes.
I feel like I'm fairly self-disciplined, but then when I get some of the stuff that comes from Amazon, and thankfully, like, a lot of my impulse buys are books or something like that.
Guilty.
Yeah, right. So I justify it like that, right? I'm justifying it to you and whoever's listening right now. I'm totally justifying it. Yeah,
It's inspiring. It's you're
yeah,
gonna help
it's
people.
gonna help. I just talked to somebody, said I should get this, and I want to get it so I don't forget. All these things I go through right now, and I'm wondering, like, how much of awareness have you had of like your own impulse, because Amazon provides such a convenience to be impulsive.
Well, I think it lines it up with everything that we experience these days, is that fast satisfaction, right? Everything is click, click, and boom. You have whatever you need or you want at any time. So yeah, and it's interesting that you brought up books, because books definitely a big thing for me on Amazon. And that's the thing that started this whole fast for me, is because there's a local bookshop up the road. And when I realized they were open, because see, my excuse for all of this was I can't buy anything anywhere for a little while. And that's how I found myself in this trap, because I haven't been a huge, just not that bad, but and so I spent a couple extra dollars, and I rode my bike to the shop between specific hours to pick it up. And it wasn't as easy or simple, but it felt really good. And the again, on the book front, that's the only time that I came this close. I think it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I not usually on my phone at that late at night, but I wanted this herb book. So bad. And I thought, well, it's used and I'm never going to find it local. And it was the last copy. And I went all the way. This is the only time I've done this in the last month, but all the way to the very, very end. And I almost pushed it and I didn't. And I woke up. I woke up the next morning. It's like, not having a glass of wine or something, right? I woke up like, but I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of myself. But in terms of consumerism, absolutely. One of the biggest things for me during COVID has been just looking around and feeling so grateful for all of the things that I have, and food, and there's nothing that I need technically, right? And so it's hard with that mentality when the last thing I bought on Amazon was a thing for my iPhone so I could run. Right. And I thought, this is, again, like the books for you, right? I thought, I want to go for runs. My headphones were falling out because I couldn't hold it anywhere, and it was awkward.
Practical, makes perfect sense to have.
I'm so glad that I got that in June, because the idea being, ladies and gentlemen, is that at the end of July, I'm not going to be shopping on Amazon anymore. I know it in my heart from having this experience. And what I think will be neat, and why that now I'm realizing more and more that I want to write about it and share about it, is that it might get other people thinking as well, right? We think it's this convenience and this added benefit, and it's just not necessary. I don't want to be like, I need to consume all the time. We're marketed to and taught this, and let's back out of it a little bit, especially with the Amazon thing. When 2 or 3 different trucks are showing up at your front door every day. My office is downstairs, so I can see them coming up, and I'm thinking, something's not right about. We know that we're going to see the drones at some point, right?
Yeah.
In lifetime, probably. So
I think they're already testing the drones.
Oh, they already exist?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they're already testing. I think in San Francisco and Seattle, they were testing drone drops, 1-hour drone drops. And we just got an Amazon in like our main, in Santa Barbara, the main street is State Street. So there's an Amazon that just took a spot there. And I think I had heard they were talking about then testing drone drops out of there for the local area for certain items.
It is so bizarre. And we were talking a little bit about this before as well, but I don't know if I said it quite like this. But do you ever think about, just in our lifetime, what we're going to witness? I being the age that I am as well, like, I remember when my phone was attached to the wall and I would press play on my answering machine when I got home after school or wherever I was, And then there's the internet and cell phones, and and the drones, and then COVID, and masks, whoever. I'm standing in the grocery store the other day, and you've got your mask on, you can hear them reminding you to stay 6 feet apart. And I'm sure that a lot of people watching, or you felt this as well, where you just have this wash over you of thinking, where am I?
Yeah.
What is even happening right now? But yeah, this isn't even I think the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're going to see a lot.
Yeah, I think I told you before, and I'm fully predicting alien invasion by the end of the summer.
I'm
So
glad you brought that up.
because I've been thinking the same thing too. It's just like I feel like it's changing so fast, and it feels like we're in some sort of sci-fi futuristic fiction novel, and then on top of it, it's our affinity for what's clickable now is so much so, like, and Amazon. And it's interesting, like I find it so fascinating that we will often use terminology like addiction and restrict it to alcohol and drugs, but we won't apply it to things like Amazon or sugar consumption, even though we know that more people die, we could argue directly and indirectly, from sugar consumption every year than alcohol and drugs by a factor of like 50.
Wow, yeah, absolutely.
And so, but we won't say that there. We'll say something else. And so it's absolutely fascinating to see all these things come out. And I think that we were chatting about this beforehand. I think one of the really incredible things as an observer, at least during this time for me, has been, I feel like a lot of people are asking questions.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. I
ask better questions.
Yes. Like it really is. Like, I feel like I've had some incredible conversations, Erin, with people who I rarely ever hear them question anything. They're kind of like, they'll have their source, their belief system, and that's that. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just that's the way they're going. And they're going to watch this news source because that's what their family watched, or that's whoever watches. They're going to have this belief system. And that's just always how it's been. And now I've seen people starting to ask questions and starting to have even question some of their own beliefs and to look at them differently. And I was telling somebody this earlier today, and for me, one of the things that's been really, I've always been one who, like, I feel like I had to have the answer, versus it was like a responsibility because I so desperately want to serve and help people. But then also there's a part of me that wants to feel like, yeah, being of service is a way that I can feel like I matter and I'm lovable, right? And what I've really come to, I would love to just say fully embrace, but dipping my toes into more embracing is not needing to have the answer, but looking for better questions to ask.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And that it's okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes people think, oh my gosh, I've been fighting for this and so passionate and so adamant about it. I could never, no matter what, little intuition is going off in my head, or my gut is telling me, no, never say that I was wrong and believe something else now. And of course you can.
Yeah.
There's room for that. And yeah, what else is possible, right? How do we move forward? How do we get over there? Rephrasing things, creating space and room, and yeah.
I think it's tragic how wrong we have made being wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's like how we've almost demonized wrongness so much that we feel so, I think a lot of people feel so scared to even to allow themselves to explore, because there's these massive consequences that come with it. And versus if we were to embrace changing our mind and it not having to be a right or wrong, it's learning. It's just the same as, I mean, we allow for history, right? I think most of history we probably learned in school, you start to read like how much of a biased perspective that was shown. And I don't know about you, but when I was in college, I remember half the stuff I was taught was from the professor who was standing in front of the class teaching it and selling their book for $100 and some. And then they'd say, oh yeah, but I'm generously donating 10% of the proceeds to a charity or something like that, from students who were struggling to pay our food, but you're going to charge $150 for textbook. And I just think it's something that's so interesting. It's like, what if we embraced it's okay to be wrong? It's not wrong to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to learn. It's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to change your mind.
I love changing my mind. If someone teaches me a better way or a new way to think about something, I'm over the moon. I'm so grateful, and thank you for asking that question, or for explaining it in that way, or, you know, how wonderful. Now I know something else.
Have you always been that way, Erin, with that?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, what transpired then for you to be that way? Because I think that it's so cool to hear you say that and to see you say it, because you're so congruent with it. And I feel like there's so much resistance from so many of, well, you're not changing my effing mind. You know, like,
I don't know. I mean, what springs to mind immediately is perhaps moving a lot as a kid, and so always kind of watching and listening and looking to how adults or other kids or people were thinking or interacting, or empathy maybe. But I actually think it's just a really genuine, deep curiosity. You know, I want to be curious about everything till the end of my days. You know, is that true, or is there more? Is that the way I think it is, or could I think about it in a different way? I don't know. And so I guess maybe one of the reasons you're asking is, you know, how do you teach that, or how do you create space for people who do? Is it pride? Is it frustration? Is it a shame or embarrassment to go back on what they believed in? I don't know. I don't know. I guess it's the mindset of always wanting to grow and learn, right? And maybe some people don't want to learn, or I don't know. I'm not making it very profound.
no, I think that would be a fun rabbit hole for us to explore sometime.
Yeah, maybe.
We were also chatting beforehand about plastic.
Oh no! Yes.
Talk to me about plastic for you.
Well, you know what? That is such an awesome segue from what we were just talking about, because this is so perfect. It's a perfect segue. So I started recycling in my house when I was 11. So I'm 42 now. So that's 31 years ago. When I think 3 decades, 30 years, and we're in 2020, and you know, how much progress would we have made now if we were thinking about recycling back then in the 80s or 90s, whenever it was. And I've always considered myself to be someone who is very aware and cares about the environment and animals and people, and yet someone who would never ever buy plastic bottles unless I was traveling in Vietnam recently, and we had to in certain parts, right? If somebody knows a way around that, please let me know. We'd really love to learn or know. But I got really into making homemade shrubs, which is an apple cider vinegar, honey, kind of infusion, and you put sparkling water with it. And so I went to Costco and I bought a case of sparkling water, and I got it home, and I went to go grab the very last bottle out of the case, and I went, I bought a whole freaking case of plastic soda water. I was just looking at it, and it took me not only shopping for it, bringing it home, using all 24 or however many were in there. It took to the last one that I was going to go put it in the fridge, where I went, oh, I almost dropped it. It was crazy. And it happened to coincide with Eventbrite tells you about events you might like. And one of the things I used to love to do in England was go to a documentary or an independent film, and at the end you'd have a Q&A session with the director or the actors, and it was so fun. And Eventbrite was doing this thing online about plastic, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So they sent you the link to watch the documentary, and then you had a discussion about it afterwards. And so I went back to Costco just before watching this documentary, and I'm in Costco, and I'm so proud of myself. I'm going to find glass sparkling water bottles for my shrubs, right? So I do my Costco shop, I buy my case of sparkling glass bottles, I get home, I sit down in my room and space, and I set up and I watch this documentary, which was very upsetting, but also very eye-opening in so many ways. And after I watched it, I realized, I sat back thinking something's not right, and what is sitting with me so wrong, because I was so proud of my Costco shop. And I reflected back on that shop, and I realized that case of glass bottles was wrapped in plastic. That the 3 organic cucumbers that I love, because they're organic and they're 3 and they're only like $4 or something for all 3, were not only individually wrapped in plastic, but then wrapped in plastic again for all 3 of them. And I started to think about my shop, and I realized that there wasn't a single item that I purchased from Costco that didn't have single-use throwaway plastic on it. And I just felt sick because I had just learned not to buy a case of plastic water bottles, right? I mean, I knew that lesson 20 years ago, or 30 years ago even. Anyway, and it was the very first time in my whole adult life that I snapped out of being duped, that I realized that this wasn't, and yeah, for me as a consumer, you should see all the small changes I'm making. And it's amazing when you start to realize that I'm changing my shampoo to bars. I'm changing, you know, my deodorant is now a refillable one they're going to send in the mail. But I always thought it was our responsibility. And that film, for the first time in my entire adult life, made me think, and I couldn't believe it, because I'm a fairly intelligent person. I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm not going to shoot my own horn or what have you, but what about the source? I mean, I can't believe that I didn't even think to start there, right? And so I'm starting there. I mean, I'm continuing here and really making big waves on that, but I want to start now figuring out how to get into affecting legislation. And I mean, I could go on and on about this. The money that they're spending and making on recreating more, even in 2020, everything in the shops is single-use plastic, unless you really actively work against it. And it's not easy, but it's us and it's getting them, right? So anyway.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Erin. And I want to ask, because I feel like a lot of folks have this conflict of, and there's almost thematic with this, right? There's a conflict between convenience and what's on your heart. There's a conflict between ease of access and what's on your heart. I think most of us are probably conscious enough, or at least aware enough, to realize that there's a tremendous amount of plastic we go through and we waste. And I'm willing to bet that most people who are listening and watching this have thought at least once that, gosh, I sure would like to use less plastic. But then you're going back with that wrestling match of convenience, of the nature of consumerism, right? It just seems like we bind everything together with it, and maybe there's an extra dopamine hit that comes from ripping through one more layer of something, who knows. But I'm wondering, because I imagine the adjustment, just like with Amazon, it's probably a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm really curious, like, in leaning into your heart with this and really making that shift, like, what has that experience been like for you? Have you felt like it's opened something up? Do you feel like it's bringing you more into alignment with a more truer purpose of yourself? Like, can you expand on that a little bit? Because I'd really love to know.
I feel, interestingly, the first word that came to mind, which is interesting, was lighter. And the reason I say it's interesting is because it's not really lighter. It's way more complicated to be thinking about this all the time and to work against the system that's crashing down about, how convenience and ease. And but there's something that feels much lighter to me about it. And maybe that's part of the belief that I really do believe that one single individual person can make an impact, because that's how we all build up and work towards something together. You look at these protests that are going on. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So lighter, and also more connected. So more connected with being present and having everything that I need, really. So do I really need to buy that thing? Also, I learned a lot about where plastic comes from, and the reason that these big companies like Procter & Gamble, Nestle, and the reason that they're producing more and more is because they use petroleum products. And that's becoming cheaper and more accessible with all the fracking and all the things that they're doing. So then they need to find a place to turn that into money and income, which is through turning that into plastic. And again, without having known that before, even really asking better questions about where plastic comes from, now I'm looking at my 3 organic cucumbers wrapped in petroleum.
Wow.
Right? Like, I mean, I can't, and I'll try not to, poor Costco, I'm probably going to not be able to shop there much anymore. I love Costco conflict, clearly. And I won't name other names of other places because I'm going to have even harder conflicts with some of those. But there's something about, and it takes a little bit of pre-planning, but going to a farmer's market and getting my veg for the week and putting it into cloth bags. And, I just got, and I know this is a luxury, it feels a little bit luxurious, and not everybody can do this, but I mean, it's the first time in my life I've done it. I bought organic sheets
Mm.
You know, and cotton is the highest pesticide content out there. So those little things that we can do, and I think that those of us, if you're able, then it's going to bring that cost down as well for other people to have access for it as well. So if you can spend a little bit more, if you can spend the extra couple dollars and get on your bike or in your car and go to the local bookshop, you know, do. And most of us can spend an extra dollar and get off our butts and go to the store to support another person's business rather than the 1%. I don't know. I went off on a real tangent there. I can't
No,
remember
I think
what the
there's
first
something really
question
beautiful.
was.
No, and I love it too because you're saying it's a luxury to do it, but I think it's also it's the luxury of responsibility
Yeah.
in a sense, right? Because if you have the ability, the means, the access to stuff, it really is. It's that one. I remember being on this beach once in Puerto Rico. It was this absolutely incredible beach, and there is a trash can there that was so filled and overflowed with plastic bottles and trash that it was spilling out onto the beach. And then when you'd wade out into the water, you'd see like a almost a line in the sand, literally of plastic that had started to float onto the ocean.
It's so sad.
It was so sad. I was sitting there and I remember thinking, like, gosh, if everybody were to
People
just
at one piece.
yes, yeah, and take it home or put it away, that it would be gone.
Yeah.
It would be gone. And I long had this fantasy of creating some sort of charitable thing where people would get together at like cool places around the world and do a massive trash cleanup on like a beach or a public space. And then you would set up some sort of local recycling or thing in the community and within the local community there. And then you'd have like a cool barbecue or whatever bonfire type thing. But yeah, if it was just, it's the one piece I love. I think it's a luxury and it's the responsibility of a luxury in that if you do that one thing and then, you know, just you sharing that, I can imagine people listening and watching, it inspires them to do the one thing. Like even you saying it, I'm sitting here hearing myself going like, why do I take my produce and put it in a plastic bag? Because it's not that I'm worried about germs and putting it in the plastic because when I bring it home, I just take it out of the plastic bag and eat it. You know, I might rinse it off lightly, which I would do the same thing if I just put it in a basket or put it in my reusable bag. So why do I put it in that extra piece of plastic? You know, so I appreciate you bringing that to awareness because I think that's where the responsibility piece can come in, right? Is just you being willing to do that and going against the uncomfort of convenience.
Yeah.
It helps raise awareness.
It's also education too, right? Because people might, and asking better questions, people might get stuck with that thinking, well, it keeps my produce fresher longer. So I'm going to spend my money and I want it to stay fresh in my fridge. Whereas you can cilantro, you can put in a cup of water and it'll last 2 to 3 weeks if you have it in water in your fridge, right? But people say, oh, but it has to be in the bag. No, it doesn't. There are alternatives. You ask better questions, educate, and find out that, because I think that's what a lot of people get stuck is they just think it's convenient or I do it for a specific reason. But two things that pop to mind is one, the organic produce. I don't know what, it's probably in California, it's probably been great for a long time. Well, you would think maybe in Oregon too. So I've been here since 2014 and it used to have the tiniest little section in one of the major grocery stores here. And now it's half, if not more.
Wow.
And I knew that by buying that produce, I was going to be part of that wave of it being more available and a little bit lesser price. And then also just one other thing with the purchasing of the responsibility thing with the sheets, you know, you can find companies that give back, right? So if you buy something, and a lot of these eco-friendly companies that have biodegradable packaging on dish soap or whatever it might be, they also give a percentage of their profits to organizations that do good for the environment. So you can have this knock-on effect if you do a little bit of research as well. You know, and I know a lot of people think, well, I might not have the time, or just little tiny changes, just little incremental changes. And don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right, like the plastic water bottles. Horrified, but I'm now educating because it's a funny story, right? The last one, it was like a hot potato. That was so silly.
Erin, I wanted to ask you, so in addition to fasting from Amazon, crusading against plastic, you also run a entrepreneurial group for women and then do some work with grief. I was hoping two things. One, I was hoping you could chat a little bit about each of those. And the second thing is, and I don't know if this is so much of a question as it is in a statement, so you can play with it however you want. I think it's so incredible having this conversation with you and seeing the variety of passions you have. And we haven't gotten to the professional stuff yet, because I think sometimes in this entrepreneurial space, you are often gently nudged and maybe even pressured into niching down and focusing on one thing and being known for that one thing, and that's it, and whatnot. And I've struggled with that immensely because I have these other pieces that are passionate about. Each of them feels like they're an important part of my heart and why I'm here. And it's always felt anytime I've tried to ignore one at the expense of another, like I was doing something wrong, that it just wasn't, that wasn't the right fit. So I just, yeah, maybe it's just acknowledging you for that. I really think it's incredible that you are willing to, put yourself in these different spheres and to share of yourself so generously in each of them. And it seems that each of the things we talked about now, and we're going to talk about right now, they are important pieces of your heart. And I think it's just so incredible that you're choosing to honor that.
Aw, thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it's super inspiring. And so, okay, talk to us about a little bit about the women's entrepreneur group, and then also the work you're doing with griefs.
So the Women's Entrepreneur Group is called POWER, which is Portland, Oregon Women Entrepreneur Roundtable. We named ourselves that at the beginning of 2019. This came about in beginning of 2018, so it'll be almost 3 years soon. And I just kept meeting the most incredible women here in Portland, really incredible women, badass business owners, entrepreneurs, really staying true to themselves and what their unique talent is and gift to the world, and then running with that. And I think that's so, so important. I think we're all here for a reason. And I think that if we can figure out what that special gift is that fills us with joy, but also makes an impact and is a contribution, and then we can turn that into a business. I mean, that's what we really all ideally want to be doing. I really believe that that's the truth for everyone. And so I kept meeting these incredible women, and I thought, what would happen if my ex and I had a bar on North Mississippi. He's still there. It's an amazing, well, not open, but an amazing bar. And he said, we're not open during the day. We have this space. And he actually really encouraged me. And from day one, it was so cute because, oh, sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rampage, but he was sweet. I made a Facebook event page, and he said, how many people do you think are going to turn up? And I said, 20. He goes, how many people said attending? I said, 20. And he goes, oh. He goes, well, just so you know, if it's a couple turn up, it's a success. And I was like, okay. And I went there, and 20 people turned up, because I emailed them all individually days before. Anyway, we've grown from strength to strength, and I'm just in awe of this community. It's weird because they say they're very sweet and kind, and we all believe in energetics, and they're very sweet, and they say, you're attracting this, and I say, thank you, I'll receive that. At the same time, I create this container, and you guys all fill it out. I mean, there is no competition. This is kind of our community agreements from day one. I've said no competition. Look, if you see someone stand up that does something similar to you, that could be your biggest ally. That's who you want to collaborate with and learn from and share your stories. And it's no sales. We're there to just lift each other up. It's an incredible heart center community. So we have 2 speakers every month. We're online now, of course, but before we went online, it was about 70 ladies turning up every month, and half of those were returning members and half were new, and it's all word of mouth. There's no advertising. What's happened in that group is just been pure magic over the last few years to witness and watch, and the community. Yeah.
Is it open for anyone, any females to attend in the Portland area? And with you doing it virtually, are you opening it up to women from out of state to attend too?
Yes, absolutely. Since we're online, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, absolutely. I mean, you can definitely network on a global. I've had people attending from BC, where I'm from, Canada, but I would love to spread that word a little bit more. It's always, you always leave feeling uplifted and kind of float away for a little bit. The 2 speakers have 15 minutes each, and that's really to get to know the community members on a deeper level. So when we go out into the world, we can recommend them, but there's no reason why someone from California or England wouldn't get something out of the event. And we're doing them 10 a.m. to 12 noon on every 3rd Saturday, but I'm taking August off just to have a month break. I also started a group called PDX Collaborative, which is the same structure, but is open to all genders or all people. And it's been really cool to mix up the energy there and have a little bit of a little bit of different energy, but with the same heart-centered approach and structure. So that's every last Tuesday of the month, and that's called PDX Collaborative. And again, you could attend from all over. It's I've included Portland in both of these names, so I'm wondering if I were to grow it a little bigger, how that would work. But yeah, for now, it's
figure that out later on.
Like that, yeah.
And then, Erin, tell us about your grief work really quick, because I want to make sure we mention that.
So I partnered with Sarah Shaul, who is one of the most phenomenal, incredible, beautiful, amazing humans on this planet. And we created Pause, Breathe, Restore, which is grief retreats for women. And we recognize all forms of loss. So death of a loved one, divorce, estrangement from family, personal illness is another form of grief. And I mean, gosh, we all know the experience of grief, especially over the last few months. So we're open to all. We're not doing in-person retreats at the moment, and we're doing a little bit online. I would highly, highly recommend checking out Sarah Shaul's podcast, which is called Grief, Gratitude, and Greatness. She's got some amazing interviews on there. So anyone experiencing any kind of grief or loss, that would be a good resource. And we have some stuff online, but we'll be picking it back up again when we start going into the retreats and trying to think about how we maybe get creative around that while we're in our current position, I guess, to see how that works. So my health coaching, I do incorporate some grief work into that. The Erin Vanderkooy Wellness is, I put together 6-month wellness programs for people and help them figure out their optimum health through a whole holistic approach. So there's some grief work involved in that if people are looking for that specifically there as well.
I love that you include all losses, and you're not, I think that's something that often gets misunderstood. In the face of death, we may tend to minimize the impact of a loss of end of a relationship or a loss of a job and how deeply it can impact. And I think that it seems that for many, sometimes the relationship ending is much harder than somebody physically dying. And for some, losing a job can be harder than somebody physically dying or ending a relationship. So it's a really, or even I think there's an identity loss that comes from getting sick and going through things like, so
in that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that there's no comparison.
Yeah.
So, you have these kids who are supposed to graduate this summer, and they can't do, you've gone to school your whole life. And yet someone might say, well, that's hardly, they've not got it bad. What about so-and-so who lost their friend, or, someone actually passed? How can you you can't compare, because to that high school graduate, that's the biggest loss they've experienced to date, possibly. And that's their loss to experience. And so it's really important not to compare grief, that everybody is right in their grief, and there's no right or wrong way to go through your grief, because there's just so much in it. And recognizing that the collective grief that we're in right now is massive. And for people who maybe who haven't had a loss, that it might be quite confusing, because the roller coaster you go through is no joke. And then for some people who've already experienced a profound loss, you have an additional loss, which maybe might not feel as profound or as deep, but it affects you. You're thrown back into it because you've had that intense grief previously. So, it's all layered and waves, and there's no right or wrong. And don't compare yourself. If you're feeling any kind of grief, it's your grief, and it's potent. Grief is a potent experience.
Erin, before I ask my last question, where can people find you online?
ErinVanderkooy.com. And then is Erin Vanderkooy Wellness. So you can book a free consultation on there if you want to chat about anything holistic health. And then powercommunity.co is the Portland, Oregon Women Entrepreneur Roundtable. PDX Collaborative is on Facebook. So you'd have to just Google PDX Collaborative. And I would love for people to come to that and spread the word. It's so much fun. I'm on Facebook. I will be on Instagram soon. Been on my list forever. I'll get there.
Erin, this has been such an incredible conversation. I selfishly do not want to wrap up, but I realize I've already kept you longer than I had promised you I would. So I want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's. I'm wondering if you seem like you seem like you're such a conscious and aware person, and I again you keep seeming like it comes back to leaning into your heart, leaning into your heart, leaning into your heart. I think that's so incredible, and I'm wondering during this last several months of taking time off. I know you've had the Amazon, you know you're on the plastic thing now. Has there been what is it that drives you? You know, what is it that when you wake up in the morning and you think about like what is the thought that you think, or what is it that you focus on that compels you each and every day to lean into your heart as you do?
Well, I mean, the first natural thing that would pop up for me would be I want to help people. I want to make a difference. You know, I want to make impact in a positive way. So that would be the first thing that springs up. And also, I just want to see the beauty in things. You know, I want to experience life, all of it. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you for all your kind words, though.
Yeah. Everyone, this was gosh, what a fascinating conversation that you're going to want to rewatch and re-listen. Erin took us down the journey of, first of all, taking on her own behavior around Amazon and looking at how she, you know, with her and the three other ladies that are in the house, and how many times Amazon was showing up each day and the amount of different trucks that were showing up, and realizing that there might be an opportunity for some self-improvement reflection there. After she waded through the first initial week of dopamine hits and going dopamine deprivation, she started to realize that there's a wonderful opportunity to go and support local businesses. At the same time, deconditioning her need to necessarily go and impulsively buy anything and everything that popped up, which Amazon affords us the convenience to. It seemed that Amazon parlayed into the opportunity then too to examine plastics and how the use of plastics and the use of it shows up in our life. And I think plastics too can also be a beautiful metaphor of what's that one thing that we all could do that can make a difference. And you know, that seems to be something with Erin that was almost thematic throughout this, is that she's not afraid to find that one thing, that one little place that she can make a difference, and you know, tilt her metaphorical domino, if you will, to help build the momentum to bring the other dominoes after it. So what's the one thing that you could do? Where's that one thing you could make a difference? Where's that one piece, whether it's plastic or Amazon or going out and supporting a local business or getting the organic sheets? What is that one thing that you could start to do today that maybe your heart's been telling you should, but your mind has been brainwashing you out of the convenience of it all? Where could that go? I love that we touched on asking questions too, and the wide-eyed curiosity that she's always had that's allowed her to be so excited if someone changes her mind. Gosh, what a notion that would be. What a notion that would be to engage in conversations with others, maybe uncomfortable discussions, which there's a lot of those topics going around the world right now, and not going into it feeling like we have to defend our point of view, but instead going in there wildly curious and excited for someone to change their mind. Or at the very least, someone to teach us something new. And wouldn't that be a beautiful thing for us to embrace learning as much as we embrace needing to be right and making somebody else wrong? Whew, what a world that would be. Fasting forward to the end. Fast forward to the end. Erin's doing some incredible things with women entrepreneurs. And whether you're in the Portland area or she's opening up to the others outside of the Portland area right now, you want to reach out and connect with her. And it's a really incredible thing too. And I love the idea that the person who might be doing something similar to you could be your biggest ally. Gosh, wouldn't it be incredible if we all began to look at one another as allies when we have similarities, instead of the competition or the person we have to watch out for? Instead of telling ourselves those silent stories that we do, instead we turn and embrace that other person as a brother, a sister, or whomever, somebody who's likely sharing a similar mission, passion, purpose as we are, and find out ways that we can mutually support one another. And last but not least, considering how do you wake up and start your day? Whether it's waking up to help people or just waking up excited and curious about wanting to experience life to the fullest. You know, many of us are going through challenging times right now during COVID, or you might be going through a challenging time if you're watching this years past COVID. But remember, there's still an opportunity to, one, wake up with an intention of serving. perhaps that could be one thing you could ask yourself right now is how can I serve today? And two, being wildly curious about something in the world. While the internet and Amazon may afford us many conveniences and possibilities, there is still a plethora out there to explore. And it might just be the way you show up with others, the way you could get excited about having your mindset and your mind changed, or anything else that Erin shared or didn't share today, but maybe it sparked something in you. Get curious about that as you go into the world because you just may not know. You may not know what joys and adventure awaits you. Erin, this has been what a gift this has been. Thank you so very much for sharing. This was everything I hoped it would be, except for not nearly enough time. And I am so grateful you shared with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We will see you next time, everyone, on another edition of A Handful of Hope. Bye-bye.